Good afternoon. We're so pleased to have you join us this afternoon for another presentation of the Collins Speaker Series. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Susie Turner, Associate Dean for Public Services at the library. Dean Coleman had an unexpected meeting in Jackson and could not be with us this afternoon. She sends her greetings and her apologies. On behalf of the University Libraries, I bring you greetings. We're honored to partner with the Stennis Institute and the Stennis Montgomery Association in presenting the Collins Speaker Series honoring the late Bill Collins. John Anderson, certainly we are honored to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Marty Wiseman, Director of the Stennis Institute, will introduce our speaker. And later, Brandon Jolly, President of the Stennis Montgomery Association, will have closing remarks. Again, we're honored to have all of you with us this afternoon. Please make yourself at home in the library. Mr. Wiseman?
Thank you, Ms. Turner. It's an honor to be here to introduce to you Judge Reuben V. Anderson. He's a man that's broken new ground time after time in virtually every endeavor in which he's been involved. I'll read you some of the highlights of a resume that would take up most of the afternoon if I were to go over it thoroughly. He's a graduate of Tougaloo College in Jackson. He received his Juris Doctorate from Ole Miss in 1967. Those of you who know much about the history of the state know what the 1960s were like in Mississippi. And Judge Anderson graduated from that law school in 1967. He's a past president of the Mississippi Bar Association. He's climbed the ladder thoroughly through the judicial ranks. In addition to his law work, initial law work in the law firm of Anderson, Banks, Nichols, and Stewart, he served as associate counsel for 8 years with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. He served as municipal judge for the city of Jackson, county judge in Hinds County, judge of the 2nd Circuit Court District, and ultimately served 6 years as a justice on the Mississippi Supreme Court. Along the way, he has garnered numerous honors and responsibilities. He's past chair of Leadership Jackson, served on numerous boards, including that of Bell South Atlanta, Kroger Company, Mississippi Chemical, Trustmark, the Jackson Chamber of Commerce, and many, many others. He currently serves as chairman of the Mississippi Economic Council, the first African American to serve in that role. His law firm now is Phelps Dunbar in Jackson, and he's married to the former Phyllis Wright, and has 2 children, Vincent and Raina Anderson Minor. And just today, to see that I'm keeping up, he had to stop by the Board of Institutions of Higher Learning to be awarded the Community Service Award for his very, very valuable and pivotal assistance in bringing the Ayers case to a workable conclusion. I also remember him, I don't know if he remembers me or not, I hope not, from our days of playing basketball at the YMCA in Jackson back in the 70s. Now, I was reading an article about Judge Anderson when they were prior to the roast by the Mississippi Press Association, and someone was being critical of his basketball skills at Tougaloo. Well, he certainly packed me a number of times, and I tried to elbow and move him around in the paint. So I broke out into a cold sweat when he became a Supreme Court justice, and I thought that I might have assaulted him more. I'm very glad to have him here to be able to introduce him and make up for anything that I might have done in the paint. Judge Reuben Anderson.
Thank you so kindly, Marty, for those kind remarks. You see, I walk up here with no speech and no notes because Francis told me that I didn't have to do anything but show up, and I think the phrase she used is to tell this group how I got where I am. And I wanted to ask her, where have I arrived to? But I'm honored to be here. I've had just a great day. I don't know if any of you have had the same opportunity as I have, but I spent about 4 hours with the engineering group, and I saw all of the fascinating things that are going on over at the School of Engineering and the Technology Center. And I can understand now why Nissan decided to come to Mississippi. It's really fascinating to know what's going on here at Mississippi State in that realm, and I know so many other realms. Let me take a moment of personal privilege and just recognize somebody in the audience that had a big role in my life, graduate of this institution, and is also still a student here, I think. Roe graduated back in the 40s, but Rowan Taylor, I don't know what you all know about Rowan, but he's had a huge impact on my life. I first had a relationship with Rowan back in the 60s and have known him since then, and a lot of things that have come my way has been the responsibility of Rowan Taylor, and I want to say thank you, Rowan, for all you've done for me. Thank you, Ro. I don't really know what the format of this program is, other than the fact that I'm supposed to share with you how I became a judge or whatever, but I'll take a shot at just giving you a little sense of how my life has developed. Let me make one thing clear. The program says that I'm retired. I can assure you that I'm not retired. I spent 10 days in the courtroom last week trying a case, so I wish somebody would tell my law partners I'm retired. They get their money's worth out of me. I grew up in Jackson, started out in the Catholic schools and ended up in the public schools to play football and basketball, and was not good in any of those arenas. I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time in Mississippi, really in the 1950s, when civil rights was a big deal. My best friend was a fellow named Jack Young, and his daddy was a lawyer. And if you were a lawyer in Mississippi in the 1950s and you happened to be African American, you were a civil rights lawyer. There were no other lawyers. I always tell this story, which is true. I didn't know that lawyers got paid until I got a check. I went to work for the NAACP in 1967, and I had never discussed being paid by anybody. That couldn't happen today, I can assure you. I had grown up in the household of Jack Young Sr., who was a lawyer, and he represented all of the freedom riders during the early 60s. And his house was always full of civil rights people. Martin Luther King had visited his home, Roy Wilkins, and all of the people who were involved in the civil rights movement in Mississippi. And my whole life, I just assumed that I was going to be a civil rights lawyer. I never did prepare, but I just assumed that it would come my way and that I would do what Lawyer Young did, and that is handle civil rights cases. And I went to Tougaloo College, which was the hotbed of civil rights in the 1960s. Tougaloo College was unique in the sense that that was the only place in Mississippi that white people and black people could be seen together. I know young people don't understand that, but during the 50s and 60s in Mississippi, a black person couldn't ride on the front seat of a car with a white person. That sounds ridiculous today, but it's true. If you rode in an automobile with a white person, you had to sit in the back seat or you didn't ride. But Tougaloo College was an institution during the 50s and 60s that was kind of the breadbasket of civil rights. All of the civil rights workers, all of the movement was generated there. And I was lucky enough to be a part of it. The first overt civil rights activity to take place in Mississippi happened in 1961 when 9 students from Tougaloo College went to and attempted to integrate the public library in the city of Jackson. They were arrested, and from then on, the movement just kind of caught on. It went from the library to the airport to the bus station, and from the out-of-state people coming in as freedom riders. And that was an exciting and interesting part of Mississippi's history. And I was there involved in it, not as much as a participant, but just being there. And it just overcome me to say that I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And I attempted to go to Ole Miss when I got out of Tougaloo, and I couldn't get in. I forgot they had a requirement that you had to have 6 graduates of the law school to sign your application. I didn't even know 6 lawyers, so this lawyer I was telling you about, Jack Young, arranged for me to go to law school at Southern University in Baton Rouge. And that was one of the worst experiences I ever had in life. And let me just kind of tell you why. It wasn't but 3 of us in my class. And if anybody has ever experienced law school, and it's not but 3 of you in the class, you can't duck too often. So I spent a year at Southern University in Baton Rouge in law school, and I was thrilled to get to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss I went there in 1965, and it was a different place. Different in the sense that there were 6 African Americans on campus, and the kids that were in the undergraduate school really had it difficult. Those of us, at least I was the only person in law school, but it was a difficult time. Nobody spoke to you. People didn't even walk on the sidewalks with you. You were harassed all of the time. But it was good for me. It was good for me in the sense that I needed to spend my time studying rather than doing anything else. So I accepted it as being a real blessing for me to be discriminated against. So I spent a great deal of my time in my room trying to catch up on those 4 years of college that I missed and find out how to study. And luckily I graduated on time, and like I said to you, I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer, and I went to New York to work for the Legal Defense Fund. And when I graduated from law school in 1967, there were 5 African American lawyers in the state of Mississippi. I only mention that to say that there are over 500 today. There's one African American lawyer in Mississippi that has practiced law longer than I have. And that gives you some sense of the void that took place in terms of lawyers in Mississippi, that is African American lawyers. My experience at Ole Miss was, I have to tell you some stories about it, but Ole Miss has been a great institution for me. I'm back on a regular basis. I served as the Jamie Whitten Scholar, a fellow, one semester. Although it was somewhat difficult during my years there, I've grown to appreciate and have a close relationship with the institution. And in 1995, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame at Ole Miss. And the unique thing about it was, I think, 30 years after all of the black students were thrown out of the football stadium and harassed and jumped on, and to have 30 years later to come back and be honored, it just shows you that the world is changing at a rapid pace. But I went to New York to sharpen my tools as a civil rights lawyer when I got out of law school, and transferred and communicated back between Jackson and New York City. I had to do that because there were no lawyers in Mississippi to handle civil rights cases. The 5 lawyers that I mentioned to you had just about gravitated away from doing civil rights work. They were older gentlemen. And I came back and headed up their office in Jackson. I would venture to say that my law partner Fred Banks and Mel Leventhal and I, we probably integrated every school in Mississippi where we could find a plaintiff. At one time we had somewhere over 70 school districts in the state of Mississippi that we represented. There were some areas we could not get plaintiffs, primarily in Jones County and a couple of other counties, but there were a lot of just exceptional people that I ended up representing in the 1960s. Aaron Henry and Fannie Lou Hamer and all of these people were just unusual and unique people. And there were other people that you'd never heard about, like Amzie Moore and various people who risked their lives to send their kids to school and who risked their lives to integrate places that were segregated. I was trying a case this week in the Circuit Court of Hinds County, and as I was preparing my closing arguments, and I got to reflecting back about that courthouse, it just occurred to me that that courthouse, when I began practicing law, had colored and white water fountains in it. And that is the very courtroom that I was a circuit judge in. And that was the very courtroom that I tried a case before last week where the judge was an African American and the jury was all African American. An amazing turnaround that you see in just in a generation. But I did a civil rights practice suing most institutions, and during the 1960s, the civil rights work was divided between what we did at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and what another group called the President's Committee did. They did voting rights cases, and we did employment cases, school desegregation cases, and Title VII cases. Title VII is employment discrimination. And I guess there were 5 lawyers in our office who handled all of these civil rights cases. We were paid by a meager amount. My first year I made $6,200. But I have to reiterate that I wasn't in it for the money during that time, although I can tell you that money is a prime driver today. But back then it was not something that was important to me. I was a civil rights lawyer up until 1973, and our law firm continued to do civil rights work, and I decided, because the NAACP didn't have any money to pay us anymore, I had to get out and make money. So I ended up doing a civil practice and a criminal practice. And Fred Banks and Mel Leventhal, my law partners, continued to do civil rights work. And in 1976, the mayor of Jackson appointed me as municipal court judge, and Governor Cliff Finch appointed me as county court judge in 1977. Y'all bear with me because I'm going back a long time. And in 1983, Governor William Winter appointed, 1981, Governor Winter appointed me as a circuit judge. And in 1985, I went to the state Supreme Court and stayed there for a while. I've had fascinating opportunities to occur in between all of those years. In 1976, I went into business before I became a full-time judge in a wiring harness business for General Motors. And for 2 years, the company that we owned, we were the largest minority supplier in the United States for General Motors, which was a huge accomplishment back then. Since then, all of that business has gone to Mexico. When I left the Supreme Court, I kind of went back into the business world, so to speak. I ended up meeting a gentleman who served with me on the board of trustees of Tougaloo College. His name is Joe Pickler. Joe was a PhD from Kansas and ended up being the chairman and CEO of the Kroger Company. I don't know, Kroger has an operation here in Starkville, but they are the largest grocery company in the United States. And through that relationship, I went on the board of Kroger, and I've ended up on the board of a number of other public companies, which is something that is fascinating in my life today. I serve on the board of Kroger, Bell South, Mississippi Chemical, Burlington Resources, which is chaired by a graduate of this institution, Bobby Shackles. I don't know if you all know Bobby, but he bleeds maroon. I can tell you that. I've never had a conversation with Bobby that he didn't talk about Mississippi State. And Roy and Taylor and I served together on the board of Trustmark. I went on the board in 1977 with Rhodes support. So that is a fascinating and unusual thing that I do, that I get a lot of enjoyment out of, and get a chance to know and meet and greet CEOs all over the country. And I assume that I'm here today in my capacity as chairman of MEC, which is the Mississippi Economic Council, the State Chamber of Commerce. I've been chairman since May, and it's been an enlightening experience for me to somewhat be the spokesman for the business community in Mississippi. One thing I found out, and that is that tort reform is a big issue in Mississippi, and a serious issue that we need to pay attention to. I'm a lawyer, and I spend a lot of my time in the courtroom, but I can tell you that the perception of our legal system around this country is awful. I know a many CEO and a corporate general counsel, and the ideas and the perceptions they have about Mississippi has a huge impact on our ability to recruit industry here. And I don't know what we can do about it. I don't know whether or not we waited too late, but it's a problem. It is particularly a problem for physicians and hospitals. I do legal work for hospitals, and the inability of hospitals to attract doctors is really a problem now, because doctors aren't able to pay the liability premiums that they're faced with, and hospitals aren't able to subsidize them. And there are some specialties that hospitals just can't fill today because of this crisis. I don't know. I can tell you one thing, that this legislative session, there won't be any relief. But this is an issue that we can't just hide and say will go away. It needs to be addressed. Those are my prepared statements, so to speak, and I've given you a capsule of my 59 years and a half that I've been around. I guess if I had to say anything else is that I've had a whole lot of opportunities to live other places outside of Mississippi, and Mississippi is somewhere that is different from any other state because we've got a lot of baggage, but the people in Mississippi are just exceptional people. Every time I go somewhere and visit somewhere outside of Mississippi, I get to appreciate Mississippi more and more. I guess if there's something that is negative, it is that so many of our outstanding and talented people are not in Mississippi today. That was one thing I was asking all of the engineering faculty today, and that is, how can we make sure that all of these young people that we are graduating and giving these great engineering degrees, how can we keep them in Mississippi? I tell this story, and it's true. I graduated from Tougaloo College in 1964, and there were 108 people in my class. There are 2 college presidents that graduated with me in my class. There are 5 people who've written books. There were 16 doctors that graduated in my class, PhDs or medical doctors. And when we had a family reunion, there was only me and one other person who still lived in Mississippi. And these people are doing great and outstanding things, but they're not doing it in Mississippi. Some kind of way we've got to do a better job of making sure that our young people look at Mississippi as a home. We need to do the same thing I told my daughter. I told her she can go to anywhere that she wants to school, but she's going to spend 1 year in Mississippi first. And you give me that 1 year, and if you don't like it, you can move on. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One was I didn't want to be going nowhere to visit my grandkids. And it's worked out for me because I've got a grandson that lives about 3 miles from me, and I try to see him every day. Thank you for the invitation. I'll be more than happy to address any questions that you might have on any issue that I've raised, and it's been a delight to visit with you. Thank you so much. Anybody got a question? Yes, sir.
Sir, we all realize that nowadays the trial lawyers do business on a strong argument to Mississippi and they finance a lot of campaigns. Do you believe the Supreme Court judges in Mississippi should be appointed or elected? If so, why?
Well, I'm glad somebody asked a question about something I do know about. As you know, I spent time on the Supreme Court. I think our Supreme Court justices should be elected for a number of reasons. In 1986, I ran a contested race, and the first thing that it did, it took me 3 months away from my office, so I couldn't take care of the business that I was elected to do. The other thing is that when you're elected as a judge, there's a myth that people give you money and you don't know about it. Raising money and being a judge is just really, they don't go hand in hand. I never liked the idea of having a bag man with me to go around and collect the money. And that's what happens. You can't give a judge a check, so you got to give it to somebody that's walking along with me. And these elections have gotten to be, when I ran the first time in 1986, I raised a total of, I think it was $94,000. This year, when these elections take place, these judges are going to be spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $750,000. I just think that appointed judges work a lot better. It doesn't completely take the politics out of it, but our federal system serves us well. Lifetime appointed judges don't have to look and worry about how their decisions affect people. They just make a decision. And hopefully at some point in time in the future, Mississippi will recognize that, but I doubt it. Anybody else? You all don't let me come all the way from Jackson and why?
In the continuation of the conversation we started on the way over here, you've been knowing a long time. Would you care to comment on the current controversy over the confirmation of Carl Pickering to the Fifth Circuit?
I guess my comment is this. I've known Judge Pickering since the early 1970s, and I don't know anything but good about him. I guess if he's got a reputation, it is that he's a very religious man. I think that's been some of the criticism. I think it's unfortunate that he hadn't been judged on his abilities as a judge, but I don't know anything bad about him. I've been in his presence. I've tried cases before him. Everything I know about him is that he's a first-class gentleman. So I wrote a letter on his behalf and just simply said that. People might know things that I don't know about him, and they have a right to be critical of him, but everything I know about him is good. Yes, sir.
The U.S. Supreme Court is now considering the subject of school boundaries for giving parents the choice of sending their children either to public school or private school. And the case that is concerning is in Ohio, where most of the private schools are religious schools. What's your feeling on the boundaries?
You know, to be honest with you, I really don't have a firm opinion regarding it. I'm on both sides of that issue, and I say it in this context. From what I know about some public schools, I would probably want my kids to go somewhere else if they wanted a good education. But at the same time, I understand people's concerns about the public school and siphoning off the resources and the funding of those schools. But if I had to pull the trigger in the best interest of my child, I would send them wherever I thought they could get the best education. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And when you make those kind of decisions, you get criticized for it. So I'd look out for the best interest of my child. But if on a bigger, broader issue, I would probably be like a lot of other people trying to protect our public school system. So I'm on both sides of that issue, and I hope you can understand. I'm not trying to duck your question, but I understand the issues, and I'd be on both sides. If that's it,
You've had experience with capital punishment cases in the state of Mississippi and then go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Can you give us any insight on this whole area of capital punishment, particularly in the state of Mississippi?
That's another area I know something about because I've sentenced 2 people to be executed, and I voted on 2 when I was on the Supreme Court, and 1 individual was executed in 1987 when I was on the court. My feelings about the death penalty have nothing to do with whether or not somebody should be executed. I just think that how we implement it is the problem. If we would implement a system where somebody would be executed within a reasonable period of time, say 2 years, but I can tell you that the average time for somebody to be executed after the commission of the crime is somewhere around 9 years. And somebody that's been on death row for 9 years, more than likely a better person than I am. They probably sent up more prayers than I have. And when you're confined to an 8x10, and that's all you've got to do is create a relationship with your maker, most of the time those people are better people and they execute them at the wrong time. But if they execute them at a fairly rapid pace, I'm in favor of it, and that doesn't happen. Absolutely. Make sure it's something I know about now.
As chairman of NBC, and in various involvement in recent tort reform, I think about some of the emails I got, you were in kind of an unusual position, being an attorney as chairman of NBC. Did you got more access to a lot of your colleagues in the legal profession? Did they come down on you pretty hard?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they understand my position. I'm not, I don't think tort reform is important because the legal profession needs to have tort reform. I think it's important because there are some areas that, and I mentioned them, the medical area and hospitals, and let me see, how can I say it? I don't think tort reform is needed in Mississippi, except that there are a couple of venues that's completely out of control. There are some venues where companies can't go to trial. They have to settle. And I just don't think that that's fair. Everybody should be able to present their case to a jury and present a defense. But in some venues in the state of Mississippi, you just can't do it. And I think that's a great injustice. And when that happens, I've been a lawyer a long time, and I try cases on the side of the plaintiff and the defendant. And but I think what people are looking for is just having an opportunity to have a fair trial, and in some venues you just can't have it. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the air case you were involved with. I recall that the Supreme Court decision came down, I think maybe 92, something like that.
Exactly.
A long time in the Supreme Court rules. Do you have to point to one or two things you think that are responsible for getting settled now? What are the things you point to? What accounts for the fact that 7, 8 years nothing's happening now? Here we have a resolution. Is it strictly because of the government wanting to happen? What's happening all along? What are the factors that produce this?
I had an opportunity to be recognized by the College Board this morning, and I made a brief statement of how significant the Ayers case was. I think the Ayers settlement was significant for a number of reasons. It's the first time I can ever recall that the state of Mississippi, that involved the governor, the attorney general, the speaker of the House, the lieutenant governor, and a vast majority of the legislature, the United States Justice Department, the College Board, private plaintiffs, including Benny Thompson, agreed that we needed to get this case over with. That 27 years was enough. And I think I told the College Board members we spent 180 hours negotiating. But I think what came out of all of that more than anything else is that it was a recognition on the part of the state of Mississippi that in fact these historically black institutions were discriminated against, and that they needed relief, and that these programs will make them equal sometime in the future. And that for the whole state of Mississippi to come to that recognition, I think says a lot. And I think that the Ayers settlement was significant. And there were a lot of people who played an important role in it, but none more so than Mike Moore. He was somebody that behind the scenes pushed everybody, and I think Congressman Thompson, without his giving in on some points and standing up on some others, we never would have gotten it resolved. And for the legislature to stand up and say that over the next 20-some years we're going to put out this money. And I have to mention Robert Caillat, who is committed to raise in excess of $30 million in private funds for students that won't attend his institution. Says a lot of that man. So it was it's something that's significant and Mississippi should be proud of.
You think our appeal is going to be successful, or will it be one?
There will be one, and it won't be successful. I mean, anytime the United States government, the state of Mississippi, and everybody else has said enough is enough, I don't think the Supreme Court or any other court should, at least I hope not, would interfere. Yes, ma'am.
We have several would-be attorneys in the room. What words of advice for a successful career like yours would you give them?
I'm sure Roe will agree. I don't think there's a greater profession than a legal profession. I guess if I had to give you some advice, what I'd say to you is that most of the attorneys that practice law, you don't see them on television, and they're not in the newspaper crying out for clients. They're the people who are out there checking a title to make sure that when you buy a house, you can feel comfortable. They're getting adoptions. They're doing divorces. They're representing people free. It is an absolute great profession. If I had to start all over again, I'd be a lawyer. And the other thing is that it gives you the freedom to do whatever you want to do. It has no restrictions on you. When I started out as a lawyer, and I think Roe will agree with me with this, and that is that people automatically look to you as being a leader. I remember when I first started out as a lawyer, I ran for public office, and because people just say, you're the lawyer, you know everything, and they push you out there. But it's a great profession. It's going to be greater, and I won't include any of the financial rewards for it, but that's not what it's about. It is a great profession. Well, thank you so much again. I've enjoyed it.
Judge Anderson, it seems that every opportunity that you've been faced with, you've taken advantage of, and you made the best of every opportunity that you've been faced with. And I know as a student, reflecting upon your legacy and just seeing the accomplishments that you've had throughout your life, it's an inspiration to us to try harder to accomplish the goals that we've set for ourselves, and we thank you for that. And on behalf of the Stennis Institute of Government and the Congressional and Political Research Center and the Stennis Montgomery Association, we would like to thank you for participating in the Collins Speaker Series. I would like to also thank y'all for attending today's program. I want to invite everyone to stay afterwards for the reception. We'll have an opportunity to speak with Judge Anderson if you would like to. Also, I want to remind everyone about our next speaker series. On April the 11th, Amy Whitten, she is a current member of the Mississippi Institute of Higher Learning Commission. She will be here on April the 11th at 3 o'clock here in the Grisham Room. So I invite all of y'all to come back for that and attend that. And at this time, this will conclude our program for today. Thank you.